I am a worthless fake master, especially after the real young master Zhen's triumphant return to the family. As soon as he appeared, he immediately began to drastically change the attitude of all my relatives towards me. This spoiled sister shamelessly took over my room and hissed, "Hey brother, do you even have the right to be here?" That same sister who used to dote on me now looked at me with an icy gaze. "Remember, you are no longer my brother." For them, there was only one true brother. Even my aunt who raised me from the cradle turned away, saying, "Don't you dare call me auntie, I've never had a nephew like you." I silently watched the pair fuss around my parents. My parents just sighed heavily, hiding their eyes full of feigned guilt. "Young Master Zhen, just leave here first," my father snapped, looking at me with a glassy gaze. "Or do you want to be forced out?" I didn't argue or respond to this circus. I turned around and left, my face absolutely beaming. How long had I been waiting for this moment? A smile spread across my lips of its own accord. What a relief. Finally, absolute freedom. Without a second thought, I took the severance pay offered to me and immediately called a car straight to the airport. How wonderful the world abroad was, a luxurious 5-star hotel, amazing food, and complete silence. I was incredibly happy with my new life. The idyll continued right up until the phone rang in the middle of the night. I jumped so hard I almost dropped my glass of expensive red wine. It was an emergency call from Master Zhen, who whispered, "Brother, believe me, I honestly tried my best. They're already here, save yourself if you can," he rattled off in one breath, making me dizzy with boredom and the absurdity of what was happening. At that very second, a familiar figure appeared right in front of me, breaking into a sinister grin. "Heh, well, finally I caught you. Dear Hong Xin, my name is Ling Yi," he declared pompously. "My eyes have been opened. It turns out I'm not a real child of this family at all. And now, if you please, the true master Gu Mingxuan has returned home. And yes, he barely reaches my shoulder." He looked incredibly naive, but the boy clearly had serious problems with his head. As soon as he stepped into the living room, he began pacing around the room. After completing exactly 4 circles, he froze with a silly expression, imagining himself a tough dragon king. "From today on, I will take back everything that is rightfully mine," he declared pompously. Noticing that I was looking at him with absolute calm, he stared at me as if I were crazy. Mingxuan's face twisted with rage, his youthful mind seething with anger, and he screamed hysterically, "If you dare lay a finger on me, I will give you a fight." "After all, you're not exactly a match for me," he said, abruptly raising his hand and dramatically placing it on his forehead, trying to recall the phrase he'd memorized. After waiting a few seconds for him to catch on, I nodded silently and continued watching this circus. Frantically rummaging through his pockets, he pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, read out the cheat sheet, then closed his eyes, turned to the wall and muttered something incoherently under his breath for a few more minutes. This scene only elicited an ironic smirk from me. "You know, Dragon King, I'm completely fine with your grandiose plans to destroy me. Then let me generously give you a chance to prove yourself," I added. Mingxuan was momentarily taken aback by such impudence, but then grinned coldly. "You think you can crush me so easily? Ha, I just won't wash your dishes on principle. Didn't you boast that you'd surpass me in everything, or did you think I'd fall for this cheap show?" My voice sounded cold and distant. "Don't think that I've seen through your game perfectly." The scenario in classic novels about the confrontation between the true and false heirs was the same. After the real master's return, the fake one would harbor a grudge, begin plotting against him, and harass him in every way. "The script calls for you to drop the plate, shatter it into pieces, and then, as if on cue, my blind parents will appear at the door to yell at me indiscriminately," I said, looking at him with undisguised contempt. "Stop playing the victim in front of me. That won't work." Catching my gaze, the boy blinked in confusion for a moment, looking at the tomatoes lying nearby, and then turned his gaze to me. Before I could even open my mouth to explain the absurdity of the situation, heavy footsteps came from the office. "Is Mingxuan here yet?" my father's voice rang out. Of course, this was now Gu Mingxuan's official father. Hearing his footsteps, the newly crowned heir's eyes instantly lit up. His body bent unnaturally, and he threw his whole body sharply towards the water cooler standing nearby, right under my arm. I didn't even flinch, so he expertly tripped over nothing, slamming his shoulder into the machine gun's frame with a loud bang. There was a deafening clang. The expensive vase sitting on the water cooler fell to the ground and shattered into tiny pieces, and Mingxuan himself tumbled head over heels onto the floor. His arm was found to be horribly cut, with blood oozing from the fake wound, and he immediately screamed throughout the house, pretending to be dying. Brother Lin Yi, I swear I never intended to take your place away from you. I just want to find a real family, please don't make me suffer, he cried out tearfully. Hearing this circus, I only smiled ominously at the corner of my mouth. The sound was quiet but ominous. Don't think I haven't seen through your cheap tricks. My methods will be far more brutal than yours, but never mind, you've clearly been reading too many cheap novels. Father rushed out of the office at the noise and was confronted with the following scene: Gu Mingxuan trying to get up from the floor, but to no avail. The poor guy collapses onto the carpet again, clutching his bloody wrist, and looks at me with eyes like I'm a beast. Oh, Brother Lin Yi, he sobs. You've all got the uncle wrong. I wasn't trying to claim his status, I just wanted to have a nice talk, Mingxuan babbled, a pitiful expression on his face, practically crawling at his father's feet. He began to demonstratively stroke his bruised knees, feigning wild pain, and real crocodile tears appeared in his eyes. At the same time, he tried his best to appear strong, casting pleading glances at his father. Dad, I mean uncle, please don't blame Lingyi for this. I fell completely by accident, it's entirely my fault and has nothing to do with Lingyi, he sobbed, smudging fake tears down his cheeks. I just wanted to fulfill a long-held dream to finally see my real parents, who knew that my appearance will bring so much pain and trouble to Brother Lingyi. Forgive me, it would be better if I just leave. The main thing is that I managed to see you, Dad, Uncle. And even if I die on the doorstep from a beating, I don't regret a thing. With these words, he tried to rise proudly and hobbled toward the exit. My father clenched his fists in anger, his knuckles white, and a storm of rage was written all over his face. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Gu Mingxuan pause in his crying for a second and cast a triumphant, undisguisedly provocative glance at me, as if to say, watch and learn how to play to an audience. Seeing this scene, the father instantly melted, captivated by the boy's false sincerity. Mingxuan immediately turned around, feigning universal humility and nobility. Uncle, I beg you don't scold Lingyi, he did it out of malice. That is, not out of malice. He continued to whip up hysteria. Lingyi, do you really want me dead? Why didn't you even try to catch that vase? My father roared, his voice rising to a scream, and he fell to his knees amid the broken porcelain, carefully gathering the shards. This is an incredibly rare item. I paid a fortune for it. There are only a couple of vases like this in the whole country. What idiot put it in the driveway? Father thundered, hating the whole world at that moment. Suddenly, his gaze fell on a dark spot on the floor. Next to the fragments, there was a distinct stain of dirt and blood. The mud from the soles of Gu Mingxuan's shoes mixed with his blood from the fall. The whole unappetizing mess looked like a typhoon had passed through. If Mom sees this, they'll bury me alive, his father wailed in horror. Aunt Wang has a day off today, I'll have to clean up this whole mess. And Mingxuan's leg is completely swollen, he continued to lament. No, Dad, Uncle, don't fight over me. I'm not in any pain at all, Mingxuan groaned, demonstratively pointing to the torn skin on his hand and wincing in mock pain. The father immediately rushed to the medicine cabinet by the dresser, pulling out the coveted Yunnan Bayao powder and bandages, then sank down on the carpet next to the victim. Gu Mingxuan continued to play out the drama of his departure, stuck in the middle of the living room. I have to go, I can't stay here. At that very moment, clear female footsteps and a familiar voice were heard in the hallway. Is Mingxuan home already? My daughter is such a gentle and kind girl, her mother said as she entered. Hearing this, Gu Mingxuan instantly assumed the tragic air of a mortally wounded martyr and looked straight at me. Stepping over the threshold, he squeezed out a farewell phrase. Brother Lin, I will not ruin your life anymore. I beg you, just don't hold a grudge against me. Let me go, I didn't ask for this at all, I just wanted to live in peace. What a dramatic story, he muttered under his breath. But at that very moment, the clear voice of a young and beautiful woman carrying a plate of fresh fruit rang out in the hallway, and she screamed in fright at the sight of Gu Mingxuan stumbling. Mingxuan, my son, what's going on here? She gasped, noticing his tear-stained face and the bruises on his knees. He quickly waved her off. Oh, Mom, I mean Auntie, don't pay any attention. I think I'd better disappear from here this very second, he said, and with these words he demonstratively stepped back, casting a look at me full of unbearable mental pain. I am clearly not welcome here, and Brother Lin's presence clearly makes him very uncomfortable, he added in a trembling voice. Gu Mingxuan gave his mother a thin, pained smile. Even though my humble home may not compare to your luxurious villa, my soul will find long-awaited peace there. Having said this, he made a decisive gesture, preparing to walk outside. His expressive eyes were fixed solely on my mother, whose face instantly contorted with universal grief and pity. Gu Mingxuan himself covered his mouth for a second, hiding a triumphant grin. But Mingxuan, if you really feel that way and insist on your own, Mom won't hold you back by force, she stammered, sighing heavily. Be sure to visit us whenever you have a free moment, just to see your father and me. After all, your brother Lingyi has enough to worry about, and you're not much use here anyway. Gu Mingxuan stood frozen in the doorway, completely stunned. His mind refused to believe what was happening. By the classic canons of the genre, Lin Mu should now be furiously lashing out at me, the false master, and tearfully begging the true heir to stay. Why was she letting him go so easily? And why did she drop that line about Lingyi already worrying about everyone and him being so useless? Wasn't the guy bleeding on the floor? Why did everyone suddenly stop caring about his drama? My mother really had no intention of making a fuss over him. Instead, she turned sharply to my father, grabbed him by the ear, and hissed, "Now go tidy up the living room. Otherwise, you'll spend the night in your office." Father immediately smiled guiltily, waving his arms ingratiatingly like a faithful dog, and grabbed his broom. He no longer cared about the broken vase, for he was faced with the menacing gaze of his beloved wife. "Okay, first I need to clean this place up," he sighed, starting to clean and casting sideways glances at the kitchen. Speaking of useful household items, a mobile app with select audio content and a convenient background playback feature is a real lifesaver when doing housework or cooking. Whether you're jogging, working out, or cooking, this service is always at your fingertips. Once you launch the player, it instantly transforms your routine, offering excellent functionality for comfortable listening. If you, like many others, love listening to interesting stories or audiobooks before bed, be sure to install this app. There's simply no better way to unwind in the evening. Meanwhile, Mom didn't even think about leaving the room. Her gaze suddenly shifted directly to me. Quickly wiping her hands on her apron, she broke into a radiant smile. "Oh, my dear son. Dad was complaining about his hands hurting, and I recently happened to be looking at a stunning antique vase. It's simply incredible. Son, could you sponsor our little aesthetic hobby?" she joked, shaking her head. However, the family budget was entirely up to Mom, who knew all too well Dad's penchant for buying everything. Whenever he became inspired by yet another purchase, the family expenses would skyrocket, ending in bitter tears from the head of the family himself. "Okay, I'm just a useless old man. Leave me to suffer alone." Father feigned a sob and demonstratively prepared to leave for the office. Then Gu Mingxuan suddenly popped out from the corner. "Dad, don't worry, I'll sponsor you myself." Hearing this, the father immediately perked up, and Mingxuan was already triumphantly pulling out a brand new smartphone from his pocket. "I've worked hard and saved all these years, Dad, so name a number. How much do you need?" he declared pompously, casting a smug glance at me. My father beamed with happiness, ran up to him, and affectionately took his arm. "What a wonderful boy you are." He then cast a reproachful sideways glance at me, muttering something under his breath about ungrateful children. "My poor daddy's completely broke. Don't trust that callous older brother." This phrase completely turned Gu Mingxuan's head, inflating his pride to the sky. He grinned at me and commanded, "Get your phone out, open your banking app, Dad. Give me your card number. I'm transferring the money right now." My father gasped with delight, but tried his best to feign embarrassment. "Oh, I was just saying." "Come on, kid, keep your hard-earned money." His father continued to protest, though Gu Mingxuan had no intention of backing down from his grandiose performance. He stuck to his guns. "It's okay, I understand perfectly well that I'm not your blood son and you're probably feeling down. I may not be able to pay your medical bills or buy you that fine tea, but I'll still give you whatever you name." His father, of course, wasn't about to pass up such a generous opportunity to rake in the jackpot from the naive boy. "Okay, let's say 20 million. 20 million is enough, right?" my father said calmly. Gu Mingxuan's eyes widened at the amount and his pupils narrowed to pinpoints. With trembling fingers, he opened the banking app on his phone, frantically checking the balance. The account showed exactly 10,003,254 yuan. I simply nodded silently, confirming my father's seriousness. 20 million, that's right, his father confirmed calmly, eyeing Mingxuan's pale face with mild suspicion. "Although, wait a minute, judging by your face, you don't even have that much money in your account, right?" he said, scratching the back of his head. "Well, why am I surprised? Not everyone has our Zioye's natural talent." Earning 20 million was a mere trifle for him. Gu Mingxuan's body trembled violently, as if he were about to choke on his own blood from humiliation, but he continued to plaster on a fake smile. "Haha, what are you talking about? A paltry 20 million, a mere pittance." His father's eyes gleamed predatorily. "Well, then transfer it if it's small change." Sweat poured down Mingxuan's forehead and his fingers went numb. Under his father's heavy, suspicious gaze, he locked the screen in panic and frantically began searching through every dubious microloan platform online. Tapping his trembling fingers rapidly across the screen, he muttered, Just a minute, I'll get it all done in a jiffy. However, a flurry of microfinance companies, one after another, issued a categorical refusal. Just try transferring 20 million using dubious online applications. Seeing how desperate the young man was about to pawn his own internal organs on the black market, his father sighed, walked closer, and lightly tapped his phone. Come on, kid, calm down. Dad understands how hard it's been for you all these years, he said softly, pulling out his own smartphone. A round 1 million yuan sat peacefully on his personal card. Gu Mingxuan was dumbfounded. His father patted him on the shoulder. Take this modest amount for pocket money, he said, then picked up a mop and leisurely headed to the kitchen, shaking his head sympathetically as he went, sighing. Oh, the guy's completely lost his mind. Gu Mingxuan was left standing in the middle of the room, completely alone. His arm ached falsely, his knees throbbed desperately from the fake falls, and at that moment he wanted not just to cry, but to howl at the moon. Why did this damn story about the confrontation between the true and false heirs go completely differently than in the pulp novels? Where were all those moments when everyone around him was hounding the true gentleman? Why were he now shedding genuine tears of resentment? Smearing snot across his face with his sleeve, he furiously rummaged through his pockets for any napkins, unfolding a tissue with such a clatter that he nearly deafened himself. This is all your fault, he shrieked, glaring at me with hate-filled eyes. It was definitely you. You were the one who said those nasty things to my parents behind my back so they'd treat me like nothing. I stood silently, completely bewildered by this torrent of nonsense. Are you crazy? I didn't do anything like that, I tried to protest. But the fake young gentleman, in the best traditions of the genre, flatly refused to acknowledge his inadequacy, continuing in an icy tone to spout nonsense about novel plots where the true heir is always to blame for everything. Stop pretending I'm me and you're you, he suddenly squealed, pointing a trembling finger at me. I bet you secretly read the script for chapter 36. I silently took a step back toward the mirror, preferring not to engage in any discussion with a madman. The fewer words I spoke, the more convinced my parents were of my reasonableness, and the more silent my opponent's rage grew. You're just mocking me with your silence, Mingxuan choked with rage. If you're so upstanding, why didn't you apologize to me right now? Do you think I don't see your mocking smile? You just want to trample on my dignity. Otherwise, why did you even buy my father that damn vase? Are you trying to show off how rich you are and how penniless I am? Look at yourself. Sure, you're attractive, tall, have perfect skin, smell nice of expensive perfume, and you make a damn good living. But what are you even proud of? Apart from those little things, I'm as good as you in everything. Unable to withstand this stream of consciousness, I stepped toward him. Mingxuan instantly recoiled in fear, pressing himself against the wall. What do you want? My voice sounded cold and lifeless. What if I just punch you so hard you'll pass out? Gu Mingxuan turned even whiter. I knew it. Look at him. The foxtail has finally come out. I sighed heavily, waving my hand. Forget it. Wasting time talking to you is pure madness. I have so much to do. Turning toward the door, I heard a commotion behind me. It seemed like someone had decided to break into our house without knocking again. The heavy front door swung open and a disheveled figure flew into the hallway like a bright, swirling shadow. Brother, save me! A familiar voice screamed, causing me to whirl around toward the exit. Before I could take a single step, this restless shadow rushed towards me like a stone, clutching my sleeve with a death grip. Brother, do something. I didn't even try to break away, simply continuing to walk forward, accompanied by my sister's incessant chatter. Lin Jixia, my little sister with the big round eyes and utterly angelic appearance, had become twice as clingy to me in the aftermath of a series of family turmoils. Just a few days ago, she'd been pestering me with complaints. Brother, that annoying guy's back at the university. He's been pestering me with his stupid advances. Please, pretend to be my boyfriend and come to class with me to scare this insolent man away. The plan seemed simple, and I agreed to help. But as soon as I walked her to her dorm and fed a couple of particularly insolent hooligans in the student cafeteria, the situation spiraled out of control again. Here we go again, bro, that idiot's back again, spreading dirty rumors that no one in this world loves me. Jixia wailed indignantly, trying to gesticulate emotionally. I nodded silently, looking at her understandingly, and at that moment, a loud coughing sound was heard. Gu Mingxuan, deciding that his moment of glory had returned, proudly puffed out his chest and stepped forward, intending to save the day. Lin Jixia stared, dumbfounded at this pompous clown. Mingxuan grinned smugly. Yes, it's me. Recognize me, leak? Noticing her strange look, he quickly changed his tack and pompously declared, Actually, I'm your real older brother, Gu Mingxuan. Lin Jixia grimaced as if she'd eaten a lemon, then looked from him to me and back again. Encouraged by his sister's apparent response to his words, Mingxuan immediately assumed a noble demeanor. Well, I've heard about your problem. Since this Lin Yi guy hasn't lifted a finger for you, I'll help you deal with your suitors. Hearing this nonsense, Lin Jixia suddenly fell silent. Her gaze darkened, and then, with icy contempt in her voice, she stepped toward Mingxuan. Who do you think you are, you freak? What kind of sweet little sister is confused about men? Are you completely nuts? Gu Mingxuan instantly deflated at this harsh rebuke, blinking in confusion. Quickly reorienting himself and trying to save face, he tried to approach her from a different angle, smiling coquettishly at his sister. Oh, come on, don't blame your Lin Yaij. He's having a hard time realizing he's a stranger here, that's why he's so nervous. He then brazenly nudged Lin Jixia in the ribs, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Well, remember, I heard him say he liked you. Well, in that exact same way, you know, romantic love between a man and a woman. He glanced triumphantly at me as he said this, but I just stared impassively at the reflection of my own face in the phone screen, feeling my cheekbones clench at the vile nonsense. Mingxuan waited triumphantly for Lin Jixia to recoil from me in horror, but instead he saw his sister's hands shaking with anger. As if awakening from a nightmare, she glared at Gu Mingxuan like a venomous snake and muttered through clenched teeth, "Are you completely out of your mind? Damn it, I was just about to say something quietly. That idiot Mingxuan is really getting on everyone's nerves. He spends his days playing the damn big brother and telling me how to live." Jixia fumed, completely losing her temper. Gu Mingxuan was taken aback. Hey, wait a minute. But my sister had already stopped listening to his hysteria, joyfully running up to me. At least my real brother is always by my side. I was truly lucky, having found myself back in a relatively safe zone. Meanwhile, Gu Mingxuan looked completely distraught. He patted his head in despair and laughed nervously. Ha ha ha, don't worry, I'm back now, and I certainly won't let him behave so selfishly any longer. Lin Jixia cast a sly sideways glance and said with a sad tone, "Oh, it was so hard for me. That guy was always teasing and bullying me. I couldn't even afford decent clothes. Every day all I do is survive on the odd snack or beg for loans. Lately, people are even demanding that I pay for everything myself, so if you can't repay the debt, at least give me 5 yuan. Gu Mingxuan frowned menacingly. Listen, don't you care at all about your own financial problems? Jixia merely snorted in irritation. What a talented actor he is. My parents believed his every word implicitly while they regarded me with utter suspicion. Gu Mingxuan seemed incredibly kind and naive to them, and they seemed so trusting that he even felt touched. He impulsively shook his sister's hand. Okay, everything's fine. How much exactly should I pay you? Lin Jixia's eyes instantly lit up, but he modestly shook his head. Oh no, brother. You don't have much savings. After all, you don't earn nearly as much as that impudent Lin Yi. Oh, come on, I have plenty of funds. His sister's words cut deep into his false pride. So how much do you need? Name a figure. 1,103,254 or 103,000. Mingxuan suddenly froze, realizing the number seemed eerily familiar. He stared at Lin Jixia in confusion, who looked at him with a dazzling gaze full of false admiration. Brother, forget it. After all, you're not that rich. Isn't it 1,103,254? I'll transfer it right now. Gu Mingxuan screamed, foaming at the mouth, frantically grabbing his phone and transferring it to Lin Jixia's account. And as the last pennies were being debited from the account, Mingxuan was ready to burst into tears right there on the spot, while Lin Jixia beamed with joy. Thank you so much, brother, I'll always support you, he chirped happily. I watched this circus scene silently from the sidelines while Gu Mingxuan smiled contentedly at me. As he parted, he whispered his hand to Lin Jixia and nodded. Okay, then we'll leave for school on time tomorrow. Of course, as soon as Lin Jixia fluttered off to his room, Gu Mingxuan turned his wrath on me again. Watch and remember, I'll make absolutely everyone around me hate you one by one, he grinned maliciously. Don't even try to pray for mercy, you can't mess around with an opponent like Lin Jixia. The next day, I simply sat in my room, staring at my phone. Sooner or later, Lin Jixia was supposed to drag Gu Mingxuan to school, but before they returned, I was dead tired of this madhouse and, closing my eyes, leaned back on the sofa. A sharp sound rang out in the silence, a heel clanging loudly on the floor coming from the hallway. A second later, the room was filled with the thick, cloying scent of jasmine, and suddenly someone gently pressed on my eyes. The air around me instantly thickened, turning into a dense fog. I immediately realized who had returned. A familiar, chilling voice came from above. I tried to rise, but was pressed down with an irresistible force, and a familiar expression appeared right before my face, though the lips remained motionless. The sounds from above hadn't been heard for a long time, and just as I was about to ask, the oppressive darkness lifted, and an unexpected hot touch stung my lips. I was forced to lean back abruptly and rise to my feet. I glanced at the dark figure, but the man merely smiled slyly at the corners of his lips. I'll always be by your side, silly. Why do you need anyone else? At that moment, the front door swung open with a bang, and a clear, animated voice rang out in the hallway. Here I am. A few quick leaps and someone flew into the living room like lightning, clinging to me at full speed like a giant octopus. Phew, what a dose of brotherly energy today, I muttered, trying to shake off the clinging figure, but the man in my arms suddenly jerked his head up and narrowed his eyes suspiciously. Wait a minute, you smell strange. His nose twitched amusingly, catching a strange, suspicious scent, especially pronounced on my lips. I felt uneasy under that piercing, jealous gaze. I had no idea how to explain this sudden attack, but then my gaze accidentally fell on the open front door. "Hey, what's this feathered wonder?" I blurted out in surprise as I tried to shake off the little sister who was clinging to me. A disheveled gentleman in a completely torn suit stood outside the door, a crazed expression on his face. "Brother, haven't you figured it out yet?" Lin Jixia chuckled. "That's our dear Gu Mingxuan." Gu Mingxuan? I was dumbfounded, looking at him from behind. How the hell had such an elite young master managed to end up like this? Lin Jixia immediately began recounting every detail of his morning adventures with relish. At dawn, they had dragged themselves to school, where Mingxuan was supposed to play the role of his sister's imaginary boyfriend and ward off annoying suitors. But given his brilliant personality, Gu Mingxuan was literally worn out and drained within the first few hours. He didn't even touch Lin Jixia's hair, but simply ran errands for everyone, carrying out any and all orders. In the heat, he was so tired that his tongue hung over his shoulder, and as soon as Jixia left to sit with his friends, the poor guy collapsed into a chair, greedily swallowing a lollipop, when suddenly 3 burly men with absolutely ferocious expressions materialized in front of him. Looking at Gu Mingxuan, they immediately understood everything. These were the very types who had been constantly harassing Lin Jixia. Mingxuan, deciding to show off in front of his sister, grinned insolently. "Oh, you were the one harassing him? Now get out of here nicely, or I'll show you all some class and give you a beating you'll never forget. I've been practicing taekwondo for years." Who knew that just as he assumed a striking fighting stance, the big guy simply punched him in the chest, slamming him straight into the wall. "What, you the smartest one here, kid?" he muttered through clenched teeth. Gu Mingxuan rose in frustration and tried to charge, but immediately collapsed from another well-aimed blow, to the laughter of the entire group. "And this is your much-hyped protector? He's just a punching bag," the hooligans taunted, continuing to hold his arms. Mingxuan screamed in fear, No, you've got it all wrong. It wasn't me at all. I had absolutely nothing to do with this." To which the hulks responded with a juicy, resounding slap on the back of the head. "So you're saying our goddess is having affairs with 2 people at once? You disgusting, two-faced bastard." Gu Mingxuan waved his hands in panic. "No, listen to me." But they only raised their fists angrily above his unfortunate head. "This is what you get for daring to insult our goddess. Take that, you freak," the leader roared, punching him in the gut. "Let your cool brother come and save you since you're so talkative," they taunted, leaving Mingxuan writhing on the asphalt. Of course, there was no one to stand up for him. All in all, Gu Mingxuan played the role of the perfect scapegoat brilliantly. It's no wonder his face now expressed every shade of pure hatred and despair. I sighed heavily, lowering my eyes. Fine, let him be a goddess for a day. Lin Jixia, meanwhile, chuckled triumphantly, running up to me and sitting down next to me. "Brother, do you agree? I handled this whole thing brilliantly. If those bastards dare to come here again, you'll protect me with your signature blows, right?" He looked into my eyes conspiratorially. I remained cold and stony silent. Lin Jixia immediately turned his dramatic attention to Lin Yu, who had approached. "Sister, at least you helped me. This callous brother doesn't love me at all." Lin Yu stood nearby, smiling enigmatically as if he'd just drunk a cup of strong coffee. "That was a great fight, good for you," he said calmly. Lin Jixia pouted resentfully. "Well, you've all conspired against me." Suddenly his voice took on a strange, mysterious tone. "Listen, brother, you still smell strangely of that same aroma." I instantly jumped up on the couch, preparing to retreat. "Where are you running to?" he sang after me. This mini lesson, however, managed to calm Gu Mingxuan's arrogance, at least for the evening. But as soon as I'd washed up and gone to bed toward midnight, I nearly had a heart attack. Lin Jixia stumbled into my bedroom without knocking, settling right in the middle of my bed in his pajamas with cute teddy bears and funny pigtails. He looked perfectly innocent, but his gaze— "Let's talk about something important today," he smiled sweetly. At first I was dumbfounded by such impudence, but quickly coming to my senses, I barked, "Now get to your room now," and tried to drag him out of bed by the leg. "Have you completely lost all sense of shame at your age? By the way, we're adults, and if your parents find out about your late-night visits, I'll personally give you a hard time." Lin Jixia only chuckled in response and, suddenly lunging forward, easily pushed me back onto the mattress. "Remember, you're not my real brother and there's no blood relation between us," he whispered right into my mouth with a dangerous, devilish grin. Without waiting for this madness to continue, I threw him off, stormed out of the room, and locked the door to Lin Jixia's bedroom, propping it open with a heavy chair. The next morning, at breakfast with his family, Lin Jixia sat directly across from me, ostentatiously handing me a glass of milk. Gu Mingxuan, looking as if he'd been run over, stared blankly at us, a gossipy glint in his eyes. "Hey Lin Yi, you and Jixia have been having a really idyllic relationship lately, haven't you?" I sipped my milk silently, trying not to react as Lin Jixia kicked my leg again under the table. Gu Mingxuan, meanwhile, made a pitiful face, turning to my parents. "Oh, our dad is so difficult, worse than all the others," and sighed loudly. As if making a fateful decision, he announced loudly, "I didn't really want to say this, but yesterday I personally saw Lin Yu break into his sister's room in the middle of the night and stay there until the early hours." He looked around the household in shock. A man and a woman should still keep their distance. Besides, they're not blood relatives. Who knows what they were up to under the cover of night? "What if he tried to pull the same thing again?" Mingxuan persisted, immediately turning the blame on me and grinning triumphantly. "Isn't that right, brother Lin Yi? I don't mean to defame you, but you know how ambiguous this looks." Everyone at the table's jaws dropped at this nonsense, but Gu Mingxuan continued to revel in his own splendor. "What's wrong with all of you? Dad, why aren't you saying anything and not scolding him for this behavior?" Mingxuan shrieked, noticing his parents' stony expressions. His father didn't even bat an eyelid, continuing to calmly chew his toast, which completely infuriated Mingxuan. He gnashed his teeth angrily and jumped up from the table. At that moment, Lin Jixia stepped on my foot again, noticing my darkened gaze. Meanwhile, Mom calmly dabbed her lips with a napkin. "What a circus you've run, Mingxuan." Lin Yu merely smiled mysteriously, caressing his coffee cup, and Mom added, turning to him, "Zio Yu, mind your table manners." Okay, Mom," Lin Yu drawled with a grin, leaving a dumbfounded Gu Mingxuan completely mentally knocked out. Eyes wide at the injustice, Mingxuan collapsed back into his chair. This family was definitely cut from a different cloth. Having barely finished breakfast, I hurried to my study room. Suddenly there was a soft knock on the door, and the room was once again filled with that familiar tart scent of perfume. The back of my neck tingled pleasantly from the soft touch, and I immediately realized whose doing it was. The owner of such a distinctive perfume was of a very specific height. If she had heard my thoughts out loud, I would have been buried alive for sure. "Sister Lin Yu, what kind of manners are you, barging in without knocking?" I barely had time to turn around before my lips were brazenly bitten. This time there was no bloodshed, but the effect was stunning. Lin Yu stood before me with an innocent, beaming smile. "This is your punishment for hiding in strange corners last night." I took a couple of steps back, frantically wiping my lips with a napkin and desperately justifying myself. "Wait, you've got it all wrong. He was the one who showed up at my room." I glanced around the room in panic. Damn, I need to change rooms immediately. The smell of her perfume was driving me crazy. Gathering my courage, I blurted out the first thing that came to mind. "Sister Lin Yu, be honest, what do you even want from me?" Lin Yu's eyes suddenly turned red with emotion. "What do you think exactly I need?" she asked quietly, taking a step toward me. I pressed my back against the wall. "Lin Yu, don't make any sudden movements, calm down." Without a word, she slowly reached for the buttons of her blouse. "I'm completely calm," she whispered. "I'm already 26 years old and I know damn well what I want. But what do you want?" Unable to withstand this psychological pressure, I jumped screaming through the open window. Luckily, I lived on the second floor and there was a soft green lawn beneath the windows. Landing in the flower bed, I was horrified to find myself face to face with my own mother, who was watering the garden bushes with a hose as if nothing had happened. "Oh, Mom, hi," I managed to croak, frantically trying to explain my escape through the window, but Mom didn't even bat an eyelid, smiling tenderly. "Son, why are you jumping from the second floor? She loved you so much since you were little, she never let anyone hurt you." At that moment, a chill ran down my spine. "Mom, stop telling me riddles, I'm really scared," I protested. Mom patted my shoulder sympathetically. "I'm looking at you from the outside and I understand, now that you're no longer related by blood, Mom simply won't be able to physically stop it," she said philosophically. "What do you mean, can't stop it?" At that very moment, the garden gate creaked open and our beloved aunt stepped out onto the path. My aunt was my mother's sister, exactly 8 years older than me. At 3 and 30, she was still unmarried, stunningly beautiful, free-spirited, and an incredibly successful professional artist. Ever since I was a child, I'd adored spending time with her. Honestly, calling her my aunt would have been a crime. She was more like a beautiful older sister. "Hello, sis, I mean Aunt Jiangwan," I called out joyfully, while my mother silently shifted the role of savior to her. Jiangwan raised an eyebrow in surprise, then burst into a loud laugh, noticing my disheveled appearance. "Oh, did Lin Yu really lock you in her closet again? Just like that day after graduation, remember? If it weren't for me, you definitely would have been eaten alive." She winked. Lin Yu, it seemed, had also had a few too many drinks, spilling too much. Auntie came closer and lightly hugged my shoulder, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "I heard something about your family's turmoil. Don't worry, little one, if this madhouse gets to you, you can move in with me." I stood there half dead, feeling like a complete idiot at 18. Jiangwan leaned close to my ear. "By the way, I'm also well aware of your situation, and since you're no longer her brother, perhaps you'd consider me as a candidate." My eyes widened at such impudence. "Auntie, you're joking right now, right? Tell me it's just a prank," I stuttered. She froze for a second, her eyes narrowing mischievously and the tips of her ears suddenly turned red. What the hell is going on here? Deciding I'd had enough of the shocks for today, I silently turned around, intending to pack my things and flee this house to the ends of the earth. But after taking a few steps, I bumped into Gu Mingxuan, frozen in the middle of the path, looking like a completely crushed bear. Waving his arms hysterically, he screamed at the top of his lungs, "You're all nuts. I swear I won't last long in this madhouse. I'm dead, do you hear me? I'm dead," and ran out of the yard with a shriek. Ultimately, I couldn't simply accept death, but a determination was brewing within me. Was I, this fake young gentleman, really going to continue to deceive my family? Otherwise, why would everyone be so attached to an imposter? It's absurd. Do you think I'm writing a novel? No, I told them I'd expose everyone. I translated that novel and found a loophole in it, a truly sophisticated one. I started working my magic. I don't know exactly what tricks worked, but I hacked his account, dumped a bunch of compromising photos into the family chat, and showered everyone with choice insults. Eventually, the relatives in the group started vying with each other to chat. "Zioyi, you've clearly been hacked. The connection is terrible. This kid doesn't usually act like this. How is this even possible?" Then Gu Mingxuan himself appeared in the chat. "It's me, Lin Yi. I sent this myself. I have a nasty temperament by nature." Total shock, Sangju immediately retorted, "This guy's crazy. Who the hell are you? What kind of dog is barking?" Everything was a jumbled mess. Gu Mingxuan was devastated. "Why don't you believe me? I really am such a scoundrel," he cursed. And when Sangju called, it turned out, I get it, my account was hacked. I immediately guessed who it was. After we'd sorted everything out in the group, Gu Mingxuan returned home, furious. "Where did you track me down?" he asked, glaring at me. "This is all your fault." I sighed heavily and took a step toward him. Bang! My blow landed right on his head and he collapsed to the floor. Gu Mingxuan panicked, his eyes red with fear. "What are you doing?" He had a gun on him, and by the looks of it, he was in a lot of pain. He tried to get up, but I punched him in the face while he was on the floor. I was serious. He started begging for mercy. At that moment, the door swung open and Mom and Dad walked in. I was stunned for a second, but Gu Mingxuan, noticing them, immediately acted out the scene. It was me who had attacked him, and he fell to the ground in panic. "Lin Yi, I didn't mean to take your place. Forgive me, I'm leaving. Just don't hit me. My life is already full of sorrow." He had long loved Suju unrequitedly, unable to fight back. Now he looked at his parents with a pitiful yet proud expression. They said sternly, "Mingxuan, stop this show." Father pointed toward the living room. "Actually, last time you accidentally dropped the vase, the security cameras recorded your every move." He sighed. "I understand you're unbalanced, but these kinds of pranks are getting tiresome." Gu Mingxuan stood motionless, embarrassed that his plan had failed. Having remained in this position for so long, he felt deeply hurt. "But this time it's true," he exclaimed. "You can check the security footage," Mom sighed. "Have you forgotten? Didn't you tell me last time you were careless, broke it, and promised to buy a new one?" Gu Mingxuan froze. I didn't expect to be framed like that last time. Who knew the decorative elements were actually cameras? He sincerely believed in the uniqueness of the palace objects, and now he was completely confused. The more he thought, the more resentment grew. Looking at my indifferent face and my parents' frowns, he burst into tears and ran out. The real young master Wen Cheng wasn't mocking him, but it felt as if God himself had turned against him. It began to rain. Anyone caught in such a downpour clearly wasn't going to give in. Gu Mingxuan mingled with the crowd and reached the intersection. Looking at the cars, he desperately wanted to be hit. Everything inside him was parched with frustration. Who would have thought that there was surveillance everywhere at home? Weren't those my words? He was afraid to even formulate these thoughts in his head. He wanted to run away anywhere. Noticing the green light, he stepped onto the crosswalk when suddenly blinding headlights illuminated him and the sound of brakes drowned out everything else. A car was rushing straight towards him. My legs felt like lead, the distance was too short. He looked up and his body instinctively jerked back. The driver cursed, "Are you looking for death in this weather?" The sound seemed to come from far away. Gu Mingxuan turned his head and saw me shielding myself with an umbrella. He was pale at that moment. I hadn't yet fully processed what had just happened, but I subconsciously whispered, "None of your business." I should have felt fear in that moment of mortal danger, but he just pushed me away and ran to the other side of the road. I don't know how much time passed. I was soaking wet and looked up at the sky. What a waste of time. He was blind. He didn't notice he'd bumped into a passerby and immediately received a response. "Hey, where are you going, kid?" These were the same people who had previously harassed Lin Jixia, but Gu Mingxuan clearly remembered the pain of his recent humiliations. He quickly apologized. "Sorry, please forgive me." But the other man clearly had no intention of letting him go. They were in a bad mood. "Then let's practice on you." The blow landed on Gu Mingxuan's stomach. He collapsed in excruciating pain. The attacker refused to stop, swinging for another blow, but the next second his fist was intercepted. At the same time, my umbrella jabbed the offender right in the face. He howled. Gu Mingxuan looked up and saw me. I took a step closer. "Are you doing this again? Isn't that enough?" The other guy apparently was called Big Brother. He was stopped before he could finish his threat. Then, before Gu Mingxuan's eyes, the thugs were defeated one by one without any effort on my part. Having defeated the last one, I carefully raised the umbrella, shielding both myself and him. Go home, your parents are worried about you, I said, spitting to the side. They only care about you. The next moment, the tip of the umbrella touched his face, startling him. What are you doing? I watched him silently. Are you saying my parents are unfair and only love me? Please give me a specific example. He desperately tried to remember anything, and I tapped his face with the umbrella. What's going on in his head? I shook my head and said, you didn't come back, and your parents cleaned out your room and decorated it. I'm afraid you don't like it. You have huge living expenses. Your parents cooked your favorite meals every day. The traveling, the life in your new house. What's wrong with you? I looked at him with a hint of anger. Except for those few times you got into trouble, your parents didn't blame you. In fact, they tolerated you. Isn't that love? He was silent. After a long moment, he raised his head. His face was slightly flushed, his expression complex. You don't like girls anymore. You still want to attack me? I glanced at him, looked away, and remained silent. Go away. Reality isn't fiction. Think for yourself. After these words, I turned and left. I thought he'd ponder for a long time, but there were no footsteps behind me. Wait for me. From that day on, Gu Mingxuan stopped doing such petty mischief. He began to truly integrate into the family. He even watched football with my father. I learned from my mother, sought out teachers to improve my skills, admitted my mistakes in class, apologized to everyone, confided in my parents about past problems, even refused financial assistance, relying only on myself. But the so-called balance of yin and yang, I feel like the dark current in the family never stops. Lin Jixia began to appear around me frequently. For various reasons, today she said she wouldn't do her homework. Tomorrow, she said she wanted to eat my cooking. The day after, she wanted to watch a movie together. Lin Yu comes to my room every day and sits for a bit. He looks at me with a very awkward expression. If he saw the catch, it would be even funnier. He simply hung a painting in my room. He said it was a gift. It was hand-painted. The style was dark and beautiful. He knew I was plagued by nightmares every night. I constantly felt like someone was standing behind me. At the same time, Gu Mingxun began to play a strange role, my bodyguard. He stood by the bathroom door while I showered, saying he was preventing intrusion. He would visit me even when I was unconscious. He would deliberately sit next to me like an electrical pole. He even checked my food, suspecting that someone might have slipped something in. There was no need to do that. I looked into his big black eyes. Dr. Tangxi told him, Gu Mingxuan is a little serious. I used to want to save you. It's my fault. I'm sorry, but now I want to protect you. Why are you protecting me? I'm protecting you so they don't eat you. These people are sick. The novel I read said, you'll become like Yiding Cheng when you fail. His face was very serious. That makes sense. They really do have that tendency. I was very touched. But can you get off my bed first? Looking at Gu Mingxuan, who had just collapsed onto my bed, I sighed. Gu Mingxuan was a little serious. I'm just trying to protect you. According to my investigation, Lin Zhai came 9 times a month, Lin Yu 12 times, and Jiang Wan 6. Your safety is guaranteed. Looking at him with a wary expression, I couldn't help but sigh. Later, the situation worsened. Gu Mingxuan received an anonymous letter. The letter said, do you want to drive Lin Yi away? Do as I say, I'll help. He showed me the letter, his expression complex. Who do you think wrote this? He asked. I didn't hesitate for long, and Gu Mingxuan raised his head. Isn't it printed? Do you even recognize it? I sighed. Even though the letter was printed, the manner of speech was easily recognizable. Gu Mingxuan was shocked. It seems he wants to take my hand and drive you away. He sighed. You're all too scary. I patted him on the shoulder. You've finally grown up. The next day, similar anonymous letters appeared. Letters from Lin Jixia, Lin Yu, and even Jiang Wan. At first, Gu Mingxuan was shocked, then stupefied, and then actively involved. Hey, this is Swordless Island. Look how I pretend to be Tang Ying. He began to cooperate with them, pretending to try to get me out, but in reality, he was helping me gather information. Lin Jixia told me today that she installed a camera in your room, he reported. Can I have some privacy? But we underestimated the situation of these 3. That night, Father suddenly announced, Mom and I are going abroad for a month. I'll leave the house to you. When Father said this, someone stared at me for a long time. I read the meaning in his eyes. I was so desperate that the atmosphere in the house changed the very night my parents left. Lin Jixia entered my room in her new pajamas. She trembled before me. The pajamas were very thin. Lin Yu was working overtime in her office, but her laptop screen reflected something. She was searching online for tips on how to make men fall in love with her. Auntie immediately moved into the guest room, saying she wanted to take care of us. Gu Mingxuan and I exchanged glances in both sides, or rather Gu Mingxuan said, let's run away. Run away where? Anywhere, but it was too late. The next morning when I woke up, I found the door locked from the outside. The window was closed too. I heard Lin Jixia's voice outside the door. Brother, I brought breakfast. You open the door. Oh, you closed the door. How do I open it? Okay, I forgot. Wait for me. I went to get the key, but she never returned. An hour later, the door opened and Lin Yu walked in. He brought a hot breakfast. Put it on my bed. Shizuya wants to lock you in, he said, but I stopped her. You are so good, little sister. I like to see. I saw the door. I don't know when I was locked in the house. Let's discuss. Can you open the door? Lin Yu sat by the bed and looked at me. Tender yet loving eyes. Why are you opening it? To keep from leaving me. She took the breakfast, intending to feed me. Come on, open your mouth. I don't know what. Look at the breakfast. I was born to eat you first. She stood motionless. Don't you trust me? I smiled and said, have you eaten yet? I can't let you starve. Why don't you eat first? I ate. Her smile disappeared. I stood up and my back was pressed against the wall. I was sweating all over. At that moment, the door was broken down. Auntie came in with an iron hammer in her hands. She assessed the situation and smiled. Auntie, don't be afraid. I will save you. This touched me. Auntie, you are so kind. Auntie smiled and turned to the fish. The fish's face turned cold. Auntie, are you trying to compete with me? Auntie smiled slightly. I just want to be kind to you. We can't make you feel uncomfortable. She looked at me and the fish looked back at me. I checked the carp and unconsciously approached Auntie. Auntie's mouth and paws were getting bigger, but the carp's face was dark. I was about to approach my aunt when suddenly the carp said, Auntie, have you thought about this? You're not a very good auntie. My feet got stuck. I looked at my auntie and she was smiling. What happened? Come here. My feet moved, but the next moment something fell behind my aunt, a pair of handcuffs. Oh, sorry, you just didn't see. She bent down and picked them up, but I noticed the needle in her other hand. I remembered thinking I heard my aunt say something about sleeping pills and sedatives. I needed to check what was in there. At that moment, the air in the room almost froze. The window swung open, and Gu Mingxuan was standing on the stairs. Holding the tools, I said nothing, grabbed my coat, and jumped out the window. As I landed, I turned around and saw 3 women standing by the window. They were watching us from afar, smiling, their faces impassive. Auntie looked at me. Fine, she said, you won't get far anyway. I looked at Gu Mingxuan. Run on foot. We got in the car and drove to the train station. Where? Gu Mingxuan asked. In any case, where can I buy a ticket? Finally, we bought 2 tickets to Sea City. As the train pulled away, I sighed. I'd finally escaped. Gu Mingxuan leaned back in his seat, his face like a fish's. But then something occurred to him. No, why should I run? I opened my phone and found over 100 unread messages. They all came from them. Lin Jixia sent over 50 letters. Since you returned to a place you can't escape, I found out where you bought your ticket. Lin Yu sent one. I'll find you. Zioyi sent. The weather by the sea is nice. Don't forget your sunscreen. By the way, I was on that train. I was furious and looked around. The camera was in the car. Zioyi was sitting by the window sipping coffee. I was looking for a cup. Wet clothes. Gu Mingxuan saw it too. His face turned pale. We got off at the next stop, he said, but when we got to the next stop, we just stopped. I saw Lin Jixia jump to the ground. Brother, what a coincidence. No coincidence. 2 stops later, the carp climbed out. He was wearing a black windbreaker and high heels. The 3 of them stood at the corners of the car, surrounding us. Gu Mingxuan looked at me with despair. I was wrong. I really was wrong. I wanted to drive you away earlier. It's my fault. Now I understand. You don't have to leave this house. You can't leave at all. They won't let you leave. I sighed and pressed my hand on his shoulder. It's okay. I'm used to it. The train continued moving. The landscape flashed past the window. 3 women slowly approached us from 3 directions. Gu Mingxuan closed his eyes, probably praying. I calmed down, knowing the peach was useless. Gu Mingxuan patted my shoulder. I was silent for a moment. Don't worry, we didn't lose. I already have a great idea. I was a little cold toward him. Can you do it? Gu Mingxuan patted his chest, a little self-assured. Don't worry, I'm still worried about my work. My novel wasn't in vain. A month later, my parents returned. It's really bad to see us sitting quietly at home. This one, Mom's so-so, it's not worth it. Now is not the time to go back. I said I'd rip Dad's arm off. Let's come back in a little while. You carry on. But they held me in their arms and we came to an agreement. Mom, what are you talking about? We're obedient children. We're not up to anything. I looked at the other 2 and nodded. Look at me again. Brother, are you serious? I chose to remain silent. They'd been surprisingly quiet this month. But beneath this calm surface, darkness lurked. Confrontation was inevitable. I rose from my chair and looked firmly at my parents. Mom, Dad, I need to tell you something. They froze, sensing my seriousness. What's wrong? Do you have children yet? How many? They asked, looking at my beaming face. Those around me started laughing too, thinking it was a joke. But suddenly I lost my temper. The atmosphere instantly escalated. A deathly silence fell over the living room and the tension was already hanging in the air. Sorry, I'll explain everything now. I arranged the delivery and laid out the evidence in front of my parents. The sounds around me became simply unbelievable. Are you kidding? This is nonsense. I don't believe it. My parents looked around and said hesitantly, it seems true. I was shocked. Who was this person? I didn't slow down. Just as I was about to continue, Gu Mingxuan approached. "This is my sister," she declared, pointing to herself. The other two women looked at me with undisguised hatred, but Gu Mingxuan merely shook her head. "No, my parents were raised by my sister, Gu Hanmo." Everyone was stunned. "You're not kidding, are you? Why did Zhao Yi meet your sister?" I was stunned. Gu Mingxuan smiled. "Hanmo just happened to come over. They made eye contact and it was love at first sight." I don't believe it. At the same time, Gu Mingxuan was wrong. It's pointless not to believe it. It's true. She took out her phone and showed everyone a photo. It was of me and Gu Hanmo. In the photo, we're together, carefully feeding each other rice, watching a movie, hugging. The others didn't need any explanation. They understood everything. I had something to say, too. These people were fierce, and I couldn't wait to live with Gu Mingxuan, but in this situation, they could only believe it. After a long time, my parents sighed, "If that's the case. What are you going to do, Zhao Yi?" I looked around and sighed heavily. "Mom, Dad, I've decided to give her a future. We need a place that's ours alone." As soon as I said those words, it felt like everyone's eyes were ready to kill me, but I still looked at them calmly. "As a brother, I hope you'll support me." I felt cold and shivery in the shadows. "Brother, do you even have the right to do this?" He turned his head. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. I looked at the fish, sister fish. She had a complex look in her eyes and her chest was heaving with rage. "You're not my brother is only him." Okay, I was completely pissed. I looked at my aunt. "Auntie, who are you? I don't have a nephew like you," I snapped. I sighed and looked at my parents. They were talking quietly and their last words were, "Auntie, just go away." Hearing this, Gu Mingxuan's expression instantly changed. He approached, beaming with joy. It seemed he had ruined all my plans and theirs as well. "Brother Linyi, would you like me to see you out?" I shook my head, took the pre-packed luggage out of the room, and walked out the door, standing up straight. I don't know how long I walked before I felt relief. "Great, freedom at last. You saved me. Don't be like Yiting Cheng. This whole pregnancy was a sham, of course. It was Gu Mingxuan's idea. I just wanted to pretend to be boyfriend and girlfriend, but she refused. Just being a couple isn't enough. The illness won't let you go." She looked at me with a wild expression. "Only the other one is pregnant. To stop this group of people." I looked at her. "What about you? They'll kill you." She wiped away her tears. "You'll die sooner or later. Where will there be a mountain to bury you?" I gave her a thumbs up. Now I was out of the house. I immediately got in the car and drove to the airport. After leaving the country, I was finally able to eat and drink properly. Until that day, I washed everything down with red wine. Lying in my room overlooking the sea, gazing at the stars, I heard the phone ring. It was Gu Mingxuan. I don't know why, but everything inside me went dark. After I picked up, he paused for a moment, then apologized fearfully. "I tried my best. They know the truth will come out soon. Run faster." There were no specifics. He hung up. "I've had enough." At that moment, the phone rang again. It was Gu Mingxuan's brother. "There's one more thing, my sister, Gu Hanmo. It seems something's wrong with her. Be careful. Don't answer anyone later, including me." The line went dead. Before I could answer, the phone rang again. It was Gu Hanmo's brother. "Linyi, where are you? They found out. I'm here to find you." I wanted to answer, but I remembered Gu Mingxuan's words. "I'm fine. You don't need to come." I paused. "Brother, did you hear what my brother said?" I didn't dare continue. Could this really still be the sweet and pure Gu Hanmo? Had I been silent for so long? A cold voice rang out. "Brother, I'll find you." I'm almost there, you're mine." I hung up. I was furious. No, this was all disgusting. I hurried and packed my luggage, but just as I was about to leave, the doorbell rang. I stood up, ready to answer it. It was 11 o'clock at night. Who could have come? Suddenly, a voice called out from behind the door. "Brother Linyi, it's me, Gu Mingxuan. Open the door." He only calls me Brother Linyi when he's being inappropriate. I pointed to my foot and glanced at the intercom screen. Gu Mingxuan's face was frightened behind the door. He'd brought 4 people with him and they were milling around stupidly behind him. This time, things could have turned disastrous. To win and avoid chaos, we held a friendly and harmonious fruit-picking contest. Let's see who could collect the most. Choose carefully and I will become the prize of the competition, a competition like fire. Everyone had been practicing martial arts for 18 lessons. Everyone was tired, but fortunately they had benefited. A huge figure full of life. Everyone was smiling brightly. Life is so simple.